The night she left for that so-called business dinner, I felt a pressure in my chest I couldn't explain. It wasn't fear, it wasn't jealousy. It was the quiet awareness that the person I loved was walking straight into someone else's arms. I did not say any of that to her, of course. I just stood there in the doorway like a stranger in my own life and watched her put on her coat. She checked herself once more in the hallway mirror, lips pressed together the way she did whenever she was nervous. Or lying. At the time, I pretended I could not tell the difference. Now I know I always could. I just did not want to admit it. Her perfume hung in the air like a question that would not go away. She never wore that one for work. It was the kind she used to spray on for anniversaries, date nights, the rare weekends when we forgot the rest of the world existed and let the bed swallow us whole. "You sure you'll be okay?" she asked, without really looking at me. "It might run late." There it was again. Late. That word had become its own person in our home. It showed up in every excuse. Late meeting, late client, late report, late drive home. A month before, late had meant we were too tired to cook and ordered takeout on the couch. Now late meant I was alone in our bed while she stared at her phone with her back turned to me. "I'll be fine," I said. The lie slipped out of me as easily as hers did. She finally turned, grabbed her bag, and stepped toward the door. For a second, she paused, close enough for me to notice the extra layer of makeup under her eyes, the faint tremor in her hand when she reached for her keys. "You know how these things are," she added. "Clients stall, people talk, time disappears." I nodded slowly, memorizing everything. The polished shoes, the dress that fit a little tighter than what she would usually wear to a work function, the way she avoided holding my gaze long enough for either of us to see the truth hiding there. "If you get tired, just sleep," she said. "Don't wait up." But that was exactly all I knew how to do now. Wait. She kissed me on the cheek, not the lips, a quick, practiced gesture, more habit than affection. Then she pulled away before I could decide whether to pull her closer or ask her not to go. The door opened. Cold air slipped in, brushing against my face like the last warning I would ever get. I watched her walk down the hallway of our building, her silhouette shrinking with every step, until she turned the corner and disappeared. The door closed. The lock clicked. The sound echoed through the apartment in a way it never had before. It felt less like she had gone to a meeting and more like she had stepped into a different life and left me standing in the doorway of the old one. I took a slow breath and tried to tell myself I was overreacting. It is just a work dinner. You are being paranoid. You were tired. You trust her. Did I? The pressure in my chest tightened, a steady, dull weight just beneath my ribs. I went to the living room and sat on the edge of the couch, staring at the blank television. Her half-empty coffee mug still sat on the table from that morning. The ring of dried brown around the inside looked like something abandoned halfway through. My phone was on the armrest beside me. I picked it up, checked the time, then her last message, even though I had already memorized it. "Running late tonight. Big client. Don't wait up." I scrolled up a little. 2 months earlier, the messages looked different. "Can't wait to see you. Miss you already. Call me when you wake up." The contrast hurt more than I expected. Someone once told me you can feel a breakup long before it happens, not in the big fights or shouted words, but in the small silences that creep in and never leave. I clicked the screen off and set the phone down again. The apartment hummed with the quiet sounds of night, a distant car outside, the old refrigerator in the kitchen, the heating pipes knocking softly, like someone trying to get in. I tried to distract myself. I turned on the television, the light flickering across the room. I could not focus on anything. I scrolled through channels, but every voice and every face felt fake compared to the one that had just walked out. My eyes kept drifting back to the door. I pictured her walking down the street, heels tapping on the pavement, checking her phone, smiling at a name that was not mine. I hated that image. I hated that it felt more real than the story she had given me. I stood up and walked into the kitchen, pretending I was just going to make tea, something to keep my hands busy. I filled a kettle, set it on the stove, and leaned on the counter. Her schedule had changed so fast. That was the part that rattled me. For years, I could almost predict her day. She liked routine. She said it made her feel safe. She left for work at the same time, came back around the same time, sent the same little messages in between. Then the late meetings began. At first it was once every 2 weeks, then once a week, then 3 times. She started coming home later and later, slipping out of her heels in the hallway and walking straight to the shower without a word. I had tried to be understanding. I told myself this was what ambition looked like, that she deserved to move up, that I was not going to be that insecure partner who resented her for wanting more. But tonight did not feel like ambition. It felt like performance. The kettle whistled softly. I turned off the stove, poured the water, watched the steam rise. My hands were steady. My heart was not. When she first mentioned this business dinner, it was 2 days ago. Her voice had been too casual. "My team might have a client thing on Thursday," she said while scrolling on her phone. "Might?" I asked. She shrugged. "It is not confirmed yet." I remember that now because she said the same thing about him in the beginning. "He is just a guy from work," she told me once when his name came up. "We might be working on a few things together." Might. Such a small word, such a useful shield. I carried the mug back to the living room and sat again. This time I did not turn the television on. I stared at the dark screen and saw my own reflection, faint and restless. I looked tired, older than I was. I wondered if she saw that too, and if that made it easier for her to walk out tonight.
My phone buzzed on the cushion beside me. My heart jumped, stupidly hopeful, before I even looked. It was not her. A friend had sent a meme, some stupid joke. I stared at it longer than it deserved, then put the phone back down without replying. I realized then that I was waiting for something that would not come. A quick check-in, a picture of a fancy table, a simple "hey, all good." She used to do that. Tiny updates, like breadcrumbs, leading me through her day. Now her absence felt like a closed door with the lights turned off on the other side. I checked the time again. It had not been that long since she left. Maybe 20 minutes, maybe less. It felt like hours. "You are going crazy," I told myself. "You love her, you trust her." But love and trust are not the same thing, and somewhere along the line they had split apart without me noticing. The pressure in my chest spread into my throat, a heavy lump I couldn't swallow. I tried to push the feeling away by replaying old memories, the early days, the first trip we took together, the night we moved into this apartment and slept on the floor because the bed frame was still in pieces. She had looked at me back then like I was enough. Lately, she looked at me like I was in the way. I stood up again, restless, and walked to the bedroom. Her scent lingered here more strongly. The open wardrobe, the perfume bottles lined up neatly, the gap where the dress she wore tonight usually hung. On her nightstand, her usual work badge was missing. She had clipped it to her bag earlier. I remembered the way her fingers moved, brisk and efficient, like she had done it 1,000 times now. My eyes drifted to the small drawer she kept locked, the one she said was for private stuff. I had never tried to open it. I told myself that was respect. Now I wondered if it was cowardice. I ran my thumb over the smooth wood and pulled my hand back. Not yet. Not like this. If I crossed that line, there would be no going back. And for some reason, even in the middle of my growing suspicion, part of me still wanted the option to believe her. I went back to the living room and sat down for the third time. My body felt stuck in a loop while my mind ran ahead, down streets I did not want to follow. I pictured her in a restaurant. I pictured her in a bar. I pictured her in the passenger seat of someone else's car, laughing the way she had not laughed with me in weeks. The images blurred together until they all felt true. There is a moment, right before your life changes, when everything still looks the same. The furniture is still where you left it. The lights still work. The mug on the table still has your fingerprints on it. But somewhere beyond your walls, the person you love is making a choice that will rip through all of it. I did not know exactly what she was doing that night, but I knew something. I knew the woman who walked out our door was not the same one who used to rush home to me. And the worst part was simple. My body understood it before my mind was willing to. That quiet awareness in my chest was not paranoia. It was recognition. It was my heart trying to tell me that whatever she called a business meeting was the start of the end of us. We met on a Thursday, which somehow always felt right for us. Fridays are for endings, Mondays for beginnings. Thursdays float in between, quiet and undecided, like they are still choosing who they want you to be. That was us back then. Two people caught between who we were and who we might become. It was at a friend's gathering, one of those small apartment parties where people pretend they are there for the conversation but really just need an excuse to feel less alone. The music was too loud for the space, the lights too dim to see anyone clearly, and yet when she walked in, everything sharpened. She came with a bottle of cheap red wine and an apology for being late, even though nobody cared. Her hair was pulled back messily, as if she had done it in the elevator, and there was a tiredness in her eyes that did not match the smile on her lips. Our host introduced us in a quick blur of names. I almost missed hers. She had to repeat it, leaning closer, her voice low and warm, as if she were sharing a secret instead of just a syllable. We ended up standing by the kitchen counter, away from the center of things. We talked about stupid small things first, the playlist, the wine, the fact that the apartment was too hot. Then the conversation slipped into deeper waters without either of us noticing exactly when it happened. She told me about her job, the long hours, the demanding clients, the way she sometimes felt like she was living inside a never-ending email thread. I joked that at least she had a salary. I was between projects at the time, working freelance, which is another way of saying I was broke but hopeful. She laughed, a real laugh, the kind that lights up a person from the inside for a second. I remember thinking she looked like someone who forgot how to be happy and was surprised to find out she still could be. We left the party together that night, just walking, not touching. The air outside was cool. She wrapped her arms around herself, and I offered her my jacket. She took it without pretending not to want it first. We wandered through mostly empty streets. She talked about her favorite places to sit and read in the city, the coffee shop that always spelled her name wrong, the park bench where she cried once without really knowing why. There was a loneliness in her stories that mirrored my own. Maybe that is why I fell. Not just because she was beautiful, but because she sounded like someone who needed to be understood, and I wanted so badly to be the person who finally did. We started seeing each other after that, slowly, quietly, in the spaces between our other lives. Weeknight dinners, Saturday morning walks, long conversations on her couch with some movie playing in the background that neither of us really watched. She used to look at me like I was solid ground, like I was a place she could rest. In those early days, her phone lay face up on the table, forgotten. When it buzzed, she would roll her eyes and say, "Work," in a tired voice, then ignore it for another hour. She told me everything then. The office politics, the clients who thought they owned her time, the little victories that nobody else seemed to notice. I listened. I memorized the names of people I had never met, her boss, her team, the colleagues she liked, and the ones she barely tolerated. I listened because it made me feel close to her, because I believed that if I knew her world, I could somehow protect her from it. When we moved in together, it felt like a natural progression, not a leap. We found the apartment online, visited on a rainy afternoon, and both lied to the agent that we would think about it, even though we had already decided the moment we stepped inside. We built a life in those rooms, not a perfect one, because perfection is a story people tell themselves to cover the cracks. Our life was messy, loud sometimes, quiet other times. We fought over stupid things. Who left the light on? Who forgot to buy milk? Whose turn it was to take out the trash? But underneath everything, there was this sense of us as a team. She would come home after a long day, drop her bag in the hallway, and collapse onto the couch with her head in my lap. I would run my fingers through her hair while she vented about deadlines and office dramas. Sometimes she would fall asleep mid-sentence, mouth slightly open, eyes still faintly swollen from stress. On weekends, she came back to herself. She wore soft clothes, no makeup, her hair loosely tied. We went grocery shopping together, argued over brands, tried new recipes, burned a few, laughed about it. Back then, late was something we shared. Late nights watching a show, late breakfasts on Sundays,
late decisions about where to go or what to do. Late was hours. The first time late became something else was about a year after she got promoted. I remember the day she told me. She came home with a strange look on her face. Not quite happy, not quite tired, just stretched thin, like a balloon that had been inflated too many times. "I got the promotion," she said, dropping her bag. I stood up and hugged her. I meant it. I was proud. She had been working towards it for months, absorbing extra responsibilities, staying online longer, answering calls at odd hours. "That's amazing," I said. "You deserve it." She smiled, but there was a distance in her eyes even then, like part of her mind was still in some conference room, still staring at a presentation, still chasing someone else's approval. "They're giving me a small team," she said, "more client exposure, bigger accounts." She listed the benefits mechanically, as if reading from a memo. I could hear the unspoken part too. More pressure, more eyes on her, more opportunities to fall short. That is when the late nights for work started to make sense. At first, she began leaving earlier, coming back later. She brushed it off as temporary. "It's just this quarter," she would say. "Once these new clients are settled, it will calm down." I believed her, or at least I wanted to. For a while, she still told me about her days, just faster, more condensed. She would mention names I did not know, new clients, new colleagues. A guy named Daniel who had been there longer and was showing her the ropes on certain accounts. "He is annoying but useful," she said once, laughing.
Talks too much, knows everyone. She rolled her eyes in that way she had when something got under her skin. I did not think much of it. People at work became characters in her stories, nothing more. Background noise to the larger narrative of us. But then her stories grew shorter. She started saying, "It was fine," or "long day," instead of giving details. When I asked how things were with the new team, she would shrug and change the subject. Her phone, once abandoned on the table, now stayed close to her, face down, always within reach. Messages were answered faster. Notifications cleared as soon as they appeared. I noticed things, little shifts. She used to toss her bag onto the chair when she came home. Now she took it to the bedroom first. She started showering as soon as she walked through the door, closing the bathroom with a firm click. One evening, she came home smelling like a different cologne that was not mine and not hers. Something lingering on the fabric of her blazer, faint but undeniable. "New client," she said when I mentioned it. "He wears too much of that stuff. It sticks." The explanation was reasonable enough. I accepted it, but my body did not. That same pressure in my chest flickered on for a second, then settled back into silence. People think betrayal begins with an event, a kiss, a text, a lie. In reality, it begins with erosion, small, gradual losses of intimacy, a missed goodnight kiss, a shortened conversation, a phone that gets tilted a few degrees away from you when a message comes in. I started to feel like I was living beside her, not with her. We still had our moments, we still laughed sometimes, we still had sex, but even that changed. There were nights when she was there physically but not mentally. Her eyes somewhere else, her mind still in some late meeting, or at least that was what she told me. Then came the first business dinner. She mentioned it casually. "Client wants to do a dinner thing next week," she said, pouring herself a drink. "It's part of the relationship building. You know how it is." I did not know how it was, not really, but I nodded. I knew people did that in her line of work. I had seen enough shows and heard enough stories to understand that deals were often signed over drinks, not just in boardrooms. "That a common thing for you?" I asked. She shrugged. "New territory. Boss thinks I should be in the room more." Kissed my cheek and changed the subject. That first dinner, she texted me throughout the night, little updates, a photo of the table, a complaint about the food, a joking comment about someone getting too drunk. She came home tired but chatty, her story spilling out as she removed her earrings and wiped off her makeup. I went to bed that night feeling uneasy, but I could still tell myself it was just work. The second dinner came 2 weeks later. Fewer messages, no pictures. She came home later. She was quieter, like she had rehearsed a version of the night that she was determined to stick to. "Just another boring client thing," she said, walking past me. "I'm exhausted." By the third and fourth, I had started to notice patterns. She always dressed a little nicer on those nights.
She wore the perfume I used to associate with us. Her mood before leaving was a mix of excitement and irritation, the same way she used to act before dates. When I asked how often these dinners would be happening, she frowned slightly. "Why?" she asked. I hesitated, suddenly aware of how fragile everything felt. "Just trying to understand your schedule." She sighed, soft but sharp. "I don't know, it depends. Can we not make a big deal out of it?" So I didn't, at least not out loud. But inside, something had already started to crack. And once the cracks appeared, they spread. Quietly, relentlessly. Through our conversations, through our bed, through every late night she justified with the same word, work. Until finally, we arrived at that Thursday, the night she left for that so-called business dinner, and my body, tired of being ignored, finally decided to tell me the truth my mind still refused to say out loud. The night after she left for the so-called business dinner, sleep refused to come to me. I lay awake on the couch long after the apartment had gone silent, long after the heat stopped humming, long after the street outside had emptied. My mind replayed every moment from earlier, studying her tone, her smile, the way she pulled her coat a little too tight across her chest before stepping out. By the time morning came, I had convinced myself I needed to stop thinking about it. Obsession was not going to fix anything. I told myself people in long-term relationships hit rough patches. This was just one of ours. She was stressed, I was tired. Maybe we were both imagining shadows in places where there was nothing but ordinary life. I tried to believe that. I even managed to hold on to that version of the story for a few hours. But suspicion has a way of reshaping even the smallest things. A note on the counter, a half-open door, the faint scent of her conditioner lingering on the towels. Everything looked like evidence, even if I had no idea what crime I was trying to prove. 2 days after that dinner, the first real crack appeared. She was in the shower, and her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Normally, I would ignore it, but something made my eyes drift toward it. Not out of curiosity, but because her behavior lately had trained me to be alert. The name on the screen was Daniel, the same coworker who had been showing her the ropes, the one she mentioned once in passing and never again, the one she used to call annoying. Now his name appeared on her phone early on a Saturday morning. A short message flashed before the screen went dark again. Had a good time. No punctuation, no emoji, nothing, except the raw, simple weight of those 4 words. Had a good time. The implication wrapped itself around my throat. I stared at the screen as if it might explain itself, but it remained blank, silent, waiting for her to return and erase whatever I had just seen. I told myself it could be innocent. They had a client meeting. Maybe the dinner went well. Maybe they closed a deal. Maybe he was just being friendly. But deep down, something shifted. Not a scream. Not a moment of rage. Just the quiet exhale of a truth finally stepping into the room. When she came out of the shower, wrapped in a towel, steam trailing behind her, I pretended I had not seen anything. She kissed the top of my head, wet hair dripping onto my shoulder. "You're up early," she said lightly. I nodded. I wanted to ask about the message. I wanted to ask what exactly Daniel had a good time doing. But something inside me said to wait, to watch, to gather more than a single text on a Saturday morning. So I stayed silent, and the silence became its own kind of poison. The next week, she had another late event. Some work gathering she had mentioned briefly, then dismissed. This time, she got ready in a hurry, barely speaking to me as she moved through the apartment. Her energy was off, too rushed, too excited, too charged. She avoided looking at me directly, as if eye contact might reveal something neither of us was ready to say aloud. "You don't have to wait up," she said again, adjusting the strap of her dress. I watched her tie her hair tighter than usual, watched her put on the same perfume she had worn for the last business dinner, the one that stuck to my clothes after she hugged me when she got home. I watched every tiny movement, as if my life depended on memorizing it. When she reached for her purse, her phone slid out slightly, and I caught another glimpse of a message preview. "Looking forward to tonight." I felt the words like a hand pressing against the center of my chest. She grabbed the phone quickly, almost too quickly, and stuffed it into her bag. "You okay?" she asked, finally meeting my eyes. "Yeah,"
I said softly. I'm fine. She hesitated, maybe waiting for me to say something else. When I didn't, she gave a small nod, almost relieved, and left. Something inside me changed the moment the door clicked shut. I no longer trusted her story. Not the dinner, not the client, not the meetings. She had built a world she did not want me in, and she had done it piece by piece, lie by lie, until the only role left for me was to stand outside it and pretend I did not notice. That was the night I decided to start paying attention. At first, I tried to collect small details, a few receipts she left in her coat pocket, a shift in her tone when she mentioned work, the sudden appearance of new clothes she never wore around me. Then I started noticing her patterns. She always returned home with her lipstick slightly smudged, but not from food. She always showered immediately, even if she said she was exhausted. She always left her phone in her bag when she came in, instead of placing it on the kitchen counter the way she used to. The most telling thing was her mood. She was happier on the nights she came home late than she ever was on the nights she spent with me. That was a truth I forced myself not to ignore, until it became impossible to ignore. One night, she came home smiling. Not the forced smile she used at work, not the polite one she used around friends, but a real one, a bright one, the kind she used to give me when we were new. That smile told me everything I needed to know.
And still, I waited. I wanted more than suspicion. I wanted certainty. I wanted something undeniable. A moment I could point to and say, this is where it happened. This is what she chose. That certainty arrived a week later, on a night she had not planned to leave. I remember it clearly. She was sitting on the couch beside me, scrolling through her phone while pretending to watch a movie. I was pretending too. Pretending I was not aware of the way she tilted the screen away from me. Pretending I did not hear the faint sound of a new message arriving. Her eyes flickered. She stood abruptly. "I need to take this," she said, already heading toward the balcony. I muted the television and listened through the glass door. Her voice dropped into a soft, warm tone I had not heard directed at me in months. She laughed quietly. She said she missed someone. She said she could not stay long. She said she would think of an excuse. When she came back in, she saw me watching her. "What?" she asked, too quickly. I shook my head. Nothing. Her eyes searched mine, checking whether I knew the truth, whether I had heard enough, whether the walls were closing in. She kissed my cheek again, that distant, habitual gesture. And I realized something then. She was already gone. Not physically, emotionally, completely. Her body slept beside me, but her heart had moved on long before I had the courage to see it. A few days later, she announced another business dinner. That was the night I followed her. That was the night everything snapped into place. That was the night the truth finally stopped knocking and walked straight into my life. But I will never forget those weeks leading up to it. The way suspicion grew roots. The way silence became its own companion. The way she became someone I no longer recognized, while still wearing the same face, the same clothes, the same smile. Betrayal does not break you in one moment. It chips away at you in 1,000 quiet ways, until the night you finally realize you are standing in the ruins. The night I followed her felt unreal from the moment it began, as if I had slipped out of my own life and stepped into a version of myself built from instinct alone. I did not plan, I did not rehearse it, I did not even decide it. My body simply moved before my thoughts caught up. She stepped out of the apartment in that careful, deliberate way she had developed in the last few months. Not rushed, not casual, almost choreographed. Her bag on her shoulder, one hand smoothing her hair, the other checking her phone, in a motion so smooth it looked practiced. I waited 30 seconds after the door closed, not out of strategy, but out of something closer to fear. Fear that if I left too soon, the truth would hit me before I was ready. Fear that if I left too late, I would miss the moment that mattered. The hallway felt colder than usual as I stepped into it. The building's lights buzzed softly overhead. The kind of sound you only notice when everything else around you has gone silent. I took the elevator down, even though the stairs would have been faster. I did not want to hear my own footsteps. Outside, the street was lit by long stretches of amber lamps and the occasional passing car.
I saw her up ahead, walking briskly, heels making sharp, confident sounds on the pavement. She looked like she belonged to a different world entirely, a world I had somehow been written out of. I stayed back, far enough to avoid catching her attention, close enough to see her movements. I felt ridiculous, a grown man following his partner like some detective from a movie. But the shame was nothing compared to the need for certainty. Suspicion is a slow poison. It fills the spaces between thoughts. It whispers at night. It changes how you breathe. Truth, even painful truth, is cleaner. She reached her car, unlocked it, and got inside. I watched her adjust her mirror, smooth her dress again, check her phone, type quickly, then drive off. My hands shook as I unlocked my own car. The keys nearly slipped from my fingers. I kept telling myself I did not want to catch her doing anything. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted to go home and laugh at myself for acting insane. But the hope was already thin, stretched tight like old fabric that tears if you touch it the wrong way. I pulled out and followed her at a distance. She drove calmly, not even pretending to take a business route. She took the highway toward the city, away from the corporate offices, away from the restaurant district, away from anything that could justify what she had told me. The further she drove, the quieter my mind became. She exited into an area I recognized, not corporate, not professional, not even safe. A stretch of old streets where dim neon signs flickered above tired storefronts, where cheap motels sat in clusters like bruises along the road. She turned into one of them, a place called Ridge Valley Inn, the kind of motel where carpets are sticky and windows never fully close, the kind where rooms are rented by the hour, the kind where people go to hide from the lives they pretend to value. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel as her brake lights glowed bright red before fading. She parked near the side entrance, a place without cameras. I pulled into a spot half a block away, far enough to keep my distance, close enough to see everything. She stepped out of the car. Her posture shifted instantly. Her shoulders lowered, her movements softened. She looked lighter, like an actress slipping into a role she preferred to the one she played at home. Before I could fully process the sight, a man emerged from behind the building. Tall, dark jacket, confident walk. He did not look nervous or unsure. He walked straight to her with the ease of someone familiar, someone expected, someone welcomed. She smiled. Not the polite smile she gave to coworkers. Not the tired one she gave me at the end of long days. Not the strained smile she used when lying. A real smile. The same one she wore in the early weeks when she fell into my life like sunlight through open curtains. He leaned in, she leaned in, their bodies met in a way that my heart lurched. Not a kiss, not yet, but the kind of intimate greeting that only boundaries have already been broken. She touched his chest, he brushed her arm, her head tilted toward him. He whispered something. She laughed quietly. My breath hitched. I had imagined betrayal 100 times, but imagination is merciful. Reality is not. Reality is sharp, precise. It leaves no room for doubt. They walked together toward one of the motel doors. She did not look back even once. My mind went blank, except for one thought. This is it. This is the moment. The moment suspicion becomes truth. The moment denial becomes impossible. The moment a relationship, slowly dissolving for months, finally collapses. I watched them disappear into a room with a peeling blue door. The light above it flickered weakly, as if even the motel itself was tired of witnessing the same sin over and over again. I did not move. I did not cry. I did not scream. I simply sat in my car, hands resting on the wheel, staring at the place where the woman I loved had willingly chosen to erase the life we built. People think heartbreak is loud.
They imagine shouting, accusations, thrown objects, slammed doors. But the real breaking is silent, hidden. It happens inside you, like a small, precise fracture that echoes through every part of your body but makes no sound at all. I do not know how long I stayed there. It could have been 10 minutes or an hour. Time loses shape when the world collapses quietly. Eventually, I started the car and drove home. No confrontation, no dramatic chase, no storming into their room to demand answers that no longer mattered. Just a man driving back to an apartment he no longer recognized, carrying a truth that felt too heavy to exist inside a human heart. When I walked into the apartment, the air smelled like her perfume, faint but lingering. Her coffee mug still sat on the counter. Her jacket still hung on the hook. Her life still filled every inch of our home. And yet, she was gone. Not physically, emotionally, completely. I sat on the couch in the dark and waited for something inside me to scream, to rage, to shatter. But all I felt was a strange, quiet clarity. The truth had come, and it had come without mercy. She came home the next morning just after 7, early enough to pretend she had been working, late enough to confirm she had not slept in our bed. I was sitting in the kitchen, the same chair I had been in most of the night, though I had moved to the living room for a while and wandered through the apartment when my thoughts became too heavy to sit still. The moment she opened the door, I knew she sensed something different. Maybe it was the way I was sitting upright instead of half asleep. Maybe it was the quiet in the apartment. Maybe it was because guilt has a way of sharpening someone's awareness. She placed her keys on the counter with a soft clink, as if trying not to wake me, even though I was already staring at her. "You're up early," she said cautiously. Her voice. I had always loved her voice. Now, it sounded like it was made of paper. "I didn't sleep," I answered. She slid her shoes off quietly, watching me the way someone watches a suddenly unpredictable animal. She walked to the sink and poured herself a glass of water. Her hand trembled slightly. She tried to hide it by turning her back to me. "How was the dinner?" I asked.
The question hit her like cold water. She froze for a fraction of a second, not long enough for someone casual to notice, but long enough for someone who had memorized her movements for years. "It went late," she replied too quickly. "Clients were chatty." "Was it a client?" I asked. Her shoulders tensed. She turned around slowly, trying to keep her face neutral. "What do you mean?" I did not stand, I did not raise my voice, I did not accuse. I simply said the words that had been waiting in the back of my throat for months. "I followed you." Her breath caught, her face drained of color. The glass in her hand tilted slightly, as if gravity had shifted. She placed it on the counter with deliberate care, as though her entire world might shatter if she moved too fast. "What?" she whispered. "I followed you," I repeated calmly. "Last night, I saw which hotel you went to. I saw who you met." For a moment, she looked like a child caught doing something forbidden. Then something hardened in her eyes, a shell sliding over something soft. "You shouldn't have done that," she said. Not an apology, not confusion, not fear, just a reprimand, as if I was the one who had crossed a line. It was almost impressive the way she pivoted. She stepped away from the counter, crossed her arms, and stared at me with a mix of anger and self-defense. "You had no right," she continued. "You invaded my privacy." I stared at her, stunned by the audacity. "Your privacy? You were going to a motel with another man?" Her jaw tightened. "You don't know what you saw." "I know exactly what I saw." Silence thickened between us. For a moment, I thought she might try to deny it, to spin some story about a work emergency or a misunderstood meeting. But instead, she laughed once, a bitter, exhausted sound, the kind that comes from someone who has run out of lies and energy. "Fine," she said. "You want the truth? Yes, I've been seeing someone." She said it so plainly, so flatly, that for a moment it did not even feel real. My heart beat once, hard, then settled into a strange, numb rhythm.
How long? I asked, though I feared the answer more than anything. She sighed and leaned against the counter. A few months. A few months. Those words landed like a blade, sliding quietly between my ribs. Why? I asked. She looked away. I don't know. That was a lie. A different kind of lie. A lie built from fear rather than deceit. So I waited, and eventually she spoke again. Because I didn't feel like myself anymore, she said. Because everything in my life felt heavy. Because he made things easier. Easier? I repeated slowly. Is that what this was? A convenience? She flinched. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. She ran a hand through her hair. You've been distant too. You haven't been the same. We stopped talking the way we used to. We stopped connecting. I felt alone. You didn't feel alone last night, I said. Her lips pressed together. That's not fair. Neither is this. Her breath quickened. She folded her arms tighter.
I didn't plan for any of this. It just happened. People don't fall into motel rooms by accident. She closed her eyes. I know. I waited for remorse. I waited for her to cry. I waited for something human to show on her face. But what I saw instead was resignation, like she had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times and finally accepted it was here. Are you leaving me? I asked quietly. She opened her eyes and studied me with a gaze that felt unfamiliar. I don't know. You don't know? I repeated. After lying to me for months? After building a second life behind my back? After dragging our relationship through secrecy and excuses? You don't know? It's not that simple, she said. It is exactly that simple. She shook her head. I didn't want to hurt you, but you did. I'm sorry, she whispered. The apology was weak, weightless, a word falling out of her mouth because she knew it was expected, not because she meant it. You could have told me, I said. You could have ended things before it got to this. You say that like breaking up is easy, she said. It's easier than betrayal. She looked down at her hands. I was scared. Of losing me? Of being alone. That was the first honest thing she said. For a moment, my anger softened. Not because she deserved forgiveness, but because I finally understood. She had not been choosing him over me. She had been choosing escape over confrontation, comfort over truth, a fantasy over reality. You can't stay here, I said quietly. Her head snapped up. What? Pack your things. You're kicking me out? I'm asking you to leave the home you walked away from long before I opened eyes to it. She swallowed hard. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my responsibility. Tears finally gathered in her eyes. Not for what she did, not for what she destroyed, for the consequences. She took a step toward me, but I moved back. I could see the moment she realized the gravity of what had happened. Her face cracked, just slightly, but enough to expose the truth beneath her defenses. I didn't mean for this to happen, she whispered again. I know, I said. But you let it happen, and you chose it. Every time you left this apartment, every time you lied, every time you smiled at me with someone else's scent on your clothes. Her tears fell. She wiped them quickly, as if hiding sadness might restore some of her power. I'll get my things, she said quietly. I nodded once. She walked to the bedroom with slow, trembling steps. I listened to the sounds of drawers opening, hangers sliding, zippers closing. Each sound was a nail sealing the coffin of our relationship. When she came out with her bags, she paused by the door. Her eyes were red. Her voice was thin. I did love you, she said. I know, I replied. But love without truth is just another lie. She closed the door softly behind her. The apartment fell silent again. This time, it sounded like relief, and pain, and finality, all at once. After she left, the apartment felt strangely intact, as if nothing important had happened. Her coffee mug remained on the counter. The small indentation her body made in the couch cushions still held its shape. Her hair tie sat on the bathroom sink like it always did.
The space looked the same, smelled the same, carried the same quiet hum of appliances and faint perfume. But the stillness had changed. It felt like the moment after a storm when everything stops moving, yet the air is charged with what has just passed. I walked through the room slowly, touching nothing, trying to understand why the world had not physically collapsed to match the weight inside me. There is a strange calm that settles in the aftermath of betrayal. Not peace, not acceptance, something else, something hollow. Emptiness disguised as clarity. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. The sheets were still slightly wrinkled from the last night we slept in the same space, though her side had grown colder long before she stopped sleeping here. The imprint of her life lingered everywhere, but the warmth had been gone for months. I realized I had already lost her long before I ever followed her car. My mind drifted back to the early days, to the way she once looked at me. Back then, her eyes held recognition, as if she had found someone who knew her without having to be told. That look had faded slowly, replaced by distraction, then obligation, then avoidance. It was painful to admit, but the truth had been whispering for a long time. I just refused to listen. People think betrayal is a sudden break, a clean split, but in reality, it dies the way a candle does, slowly, quietly, smoke before flame. There was no rage inside me now, no urge to destroy anything, to call her and scream, to expose her infidelity to her friends, her coworkers, the man she chose. Revenge seemed pointless. She had already taken everything that mattered. She had taken my trust, my sense of safety, the future I had allowed myself to imagine. I was not angry at her for loving someone else. I was angry at myself for noticing the signs too late. As the morning sunlight crept across the bedroom floor, a strange thought settled over me. I felt lighter, not healed, not okay, but lighter, as though the uncertainty I carried for months had finally been set down. The worst part of betrayal is not the lie itself. It is the waiting, the wondering, the hoping you are wrong. The desperate desire to believe the person you love would never do what your instincts are screaming they already have. Once the truth arrives, it is devastating, yes, but it is clean, it is final. I got up and opened the window. A soft breeze drifted in, carrying the sound of distant traffic and morning birds. Life outside moved forward without hesitation. It felt like an invitation, or maybe a reminder that my world had not truly ended. It had only shifted. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and watched the ripple settle. My hands no longer shook, my chest no longer felt tight. Sadness sat heavy in my stomach, but beneath it there was something steady, something quiet, something like acceptance. I picked up her abandoned coffee mug and washed it slowly. The water ran warm over my hands. I let it fill the sink, watching the steam rise. The simple, mindless motions felt grounding, like I was reclaiming a space I had been sharing with a ghost. When I finished, I placed the mug on the drying rack and wiped the counter clean. It felt like the first step of something new. Something painful, yes, but mine. Later that afternoon, her sister called. She asked why she couldn't reach her, why her phone was going straight to voicemail, if everything was all right. I almost told her, almost spilled every detail out of the need to be heard, but I swallowed the impulse. What happened between us did not need to be shouted. The truth had already done enough damage, and exposing her would not rebuild anything. I think she just needs some time, I said softly. Her sister thanked me, unaware that the woman she was calling about had packed up her life hours earlier and walked out of mine. I spent the rest of the day sorting through small tasks, nothing dramatic, just folding laundry, taking out the trash, organizing the bookshelf. Movements meant to convince myself I still had control over my world. By evening, the apartment felt a little different, not healed, but no longer echoing with her absence. As night approached, I found myself sitting on the balcony, with a blanket draped around my shoulders. The sky had deepened to a dark blue, scattered with faint stars. Cars murmured in the distance. A dog barked somewhere down the block. Life continued. It always does. I closed my eyes and breathed. Every emotion I had tried to outrun finally arrived all at once. The grief, the anger, the disappointment, the humiliation, and beneath it all, the quiet truth that I would survive this. Not by forgetting, not by pretending, but by understanding that I deserved better than a love built on secrets. She once told me she feared being alone. She chose someone else to escape that fear. But I chose the truth. And the truth, painful as it was, set me free from the lie we had been living. In the silence of that night, I whispered something I wish I had said to myself months earlier. You did not lose her. She left. And in leaving, she made room for the life you were meant to have. As the breeze brushed against my face, I thought about all the nights I had waited for her to come home. All the times I asked questions she answered with half-truths. All the moments when my instincts begged me to open my eyes. Now, at last, I could. And there, in the dim light of the city, one final thought settled over me like a truth I had always known but never had the courage to speak. Some endings are not failures. They are freedom. She closed our door, and for the first time, I could finally breathe.